when I found out I was having our son, it was like a shot in the chest of like, damn, dude, am I living as the example that I wanted to become? And that really kind of catapulted this whole like personal journey of like, I need to make sure that I have discipline, I have the right habits, the right routines. I'm leading my family the way that I want him to view growing up.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life. Andrew here. Yeah, Drew Camp, Andrew McConnell. Great to be here. Epic Dad Fit. Very excited to jump into that and hear the story. Before we jump into that, would love to hear how you define yourself.
Yeah, so I'll say that's a really good question. And I've got a much longer answer, I think, when we get further in the discussion. But yeah, for me, I'm a husband. I'm a dad of 3, and try to be a really good dad and a really good leader, man. So I'm on board. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, dad, I think leading with dad as well. It was one of those things growing up. I'm a lively dad, entrepreneur, author, kind of athlete, but more just like into fitness than an athlete, right? It's one of those things, being a dad, I feel like I've lived my life is that part, and I don't want to get in the way of my daughter living hers. And so we can jump into it, but like I threw away all my medals, everything like that. I just didn't want a legacy over her to shape what she wants and let her kind of
what kind of medals? Like honestly, Andrew, I know a little bit about you, but like we purposely didn't talk about this, you know? So
yeah, I mean, I was a D1 All-American. I was a U.S. national team. I was a bronze medalist internationally for the U.S. team. So there were like some good ones. But
for what? For like
open water swimming.
Oh,
yeah. So like a swimmer. Yeah.
Open water swimming, man. Dude, I did a sprint triathlon right when I got out of the Army. I was like, I need the next challenge or whatever. And I trained for it, and it was just a sprint. Like,
that's the only triathlon I've ever done. I did one sprint one.
But I trained swimming just in the pool, like in fitness or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I get out for the actual triathlon, and it is way different in open water. Like, I thought I was going to die. Like, treading water, and it was Lake Altoona in Georgia.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how far it is for a sprint.
400 meters, I think.
Something, but it was, I mean, it's not that far, but like, you know, you can't just like push your feet on the water. Much different open water.
It was interesting because we moved to Bermuda when my daughter was 4, right? And my ex-wife, her mom was on the British national team for open water swimming. She swam relays across the channel and stuff. Like she was into it. And so my daughter could swim across a 25-meter pool at 2. But pool swimming is so different than open water swimming. Yeah. And so I wrote a lot about the learning in the open ocean and the difference and kind of entrepreneurship versus corporate as the analogy
that's
of
really
that.
Good analogy,
Yeah. And it's just being comfortable with getting hit in the face with water and losing your breath for a second and realizing at any point I can just turn over on my back and it's salt water and like I can be buoyant. I can chill for a second until it's only when you panic that things start to be a problem.
Yeah,
that's a really
good analogy about corporate and entrepreneurship, like the pool and open water.
Yeah.
I mean, you can fail in corporate for sure, but like you have so much support, you know, and you can just push your feet on the ground.
Climb out on the side.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, entrepreneurship though, man. Yeah. you say
it is sink or swim, right? Yeah. You're at the bottom. Yeah. So I do want to talk, if you're okay with it, like Epic Dad Fit. So you started dad, husband, obviously very athletic yourself. What got you into what you're doing today on that front?
So long story, I'll keep it somewhat condensed, but so I'm a girl dad. I've got 2 girls, 8 and 6, and I've got a son that's 2. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. And I had a company before I started this one that was really, like, I didn't know who the audience was. It was just like finding a market opportunity, like go make some money. And then we had some disruptions through COVID with like supply chain and stuff. And it was a hard lesson to learn, but it was a good lesson of like, if you're in business, you need to know who's your customer and like what are their problems. Like I didn't have that before. And so I knew after that business, I wanted to do something that had a clear audience and a clear problem I could help on. And I just thought for, about a year strategically of like, what's the most thing like important to me? And like, what do I enjoy talking about and being around? And two things came to mind. It was being a father and fitness.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like spurred the concept of the Epic Dad Company. And then, so I launched it in 2021. And, the Epic Dad Fit has grown pretty fast. But we've had the Epic Dad Company for about 3 years.
Okay.
And so I launched the company, and what we do, our kind of main channel and vehicle is supplements. So we want to help dads get back in the gym, get in shape, get fit, but also do it like healthy and naturally.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of got into it. And there's a much longer story there about not only do I like fatherhood and fitness, but like when I found out I was having our son, it was like a shot in the chest of like, damn, dude, am I living as the example that I wanted to become?
Okay.
And that really kind of catapulted this whole like personal journey of like, man, I need to make sure that I am disciplined, I have the right habits, the right routines. I'm leading my family the way that I want him to view growing up, So
yeah. So what was the before and after picture there? Like, what was it? You said it was kind of a shot to the chest. What was going on before that you looked at and said, hey, this isn't necessarily the model that I would want him coming in the world seeing?
Yeah, for sure. So, a number of things, right? So, I've always been in okay shape. I wouldn't say I've ever been like severely out of shape, right? But there are periods of time when my discipline, my drive has been down. And so that was a big thing for me was, hey, I was hitting the snooze button, a ton. I wasn't an alcoholic, but, I had vices around drinking, had vices around porn, had vices around all types of things that I don't want my son to look up to me as his dad doing.
That's the model.
Yeah. And so what really shifted for me was using fitness as the tool to be more disciplined, to, have the right habits, to have the right routines. And then really what that does is that fuels you with more energy to go show up and lead. And so it kind of starts, at least for me and the guys in our communities, it starts in the gym.
Yeah.
And we learn kind of through that process, like we learn that, hey, if I'm more disciplined and going to the gym and getting my habits in, like the more disciplined I am with putting away my phone at dinner when I need to sit down with my family.
Yeah.
So it absolutely translates from the gym to being a leader, a husband, or father.
That cascading and compounding really resonates. I have a friend, Alan Young, who's a former Army guy as well. Mm-hmm. And it was similar that, he'd have a few drinks each night with dinner. And he said his son now is in his 20s in the Army himself. But he said at a certain age, when the kids are younger, they look up to you and they want to be wherever dad is. They're going to do whatever dad does. But at a certain age, if you want to spend time with your kids, you learn to make their hobbies your hobbies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They don't follow you, you follow them. Mm-hmm. And so his son got really into the modern pentathlon. And so they would have these morning swim practices. Yeah. And so he'd go with him and he just found, man, I feel like crap if I'm drinking. So it was the fitness that got him to give up the other things. And really it had this cascading, compounding, positive, virtuous cycle in his life.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you're seeing that at a community level.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it at its core, right, we all want to be around for our kids as long as we can, right? But if we have those vices, if we're drinking every night, if we're not taking care of our bodies and nutrition and health, like we're cutting off years of our lives on the back end, and plus like what example are we setting for our kids in that too,
And on the fitness side, now what does that look like week to week for you? What are you doing on the fitness?
So I like to change it up quite a bit. Yeah. So we've got a number of plans that we put guys onto. But for me, it's a mixture of doing strength, hypertrophy training, probably 3-4 days a week. And then I'll mix in some kind of longer distance zone 2 cardio that I'm doing right now. So I'm set to run a half marathon next month. I've been training up for it, but,
where's that?
Just in my neighborhood. Okay. Yeah. It's not like a race type thing or anything. I just said, hey, cool. I'm setting a goal for by the end of December. I'll run a half. And so my training cycle definitely kind of wanes based off like what goal I'm going after. Yeah. But I'd say the base is always going to be strength training. Okay. In my view. So
and do you have stuff at home to do that? Do you have some equipment?
I do, yes. I've got a garage gym. It's probably full of toys, all that kinds of kid stuff right now that I've got to get out of the way to do anything functional. But yeah, you can absolutely get after it in a garage gym with like just a set of dumbbells.
Bench, adjustable dumbbells, you kind of do a bunch with that.
Yeah, so I work at home. I work at a gym location too. So in the morning I go over to an Air Force base since I'm still in the military.
Yeah.
They've got a fantastic gym there. So I like to take advantage of those resources. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it shifts based off kind of what goal I'm going after.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what, the first quarter of the next year is going to look like, but I'm sure my training cycle will shift to support where that is.
And that go-to garage gym, like what are the pieces you say, okay, so we have dumbbells. What else are you popping in there?
Man, I'd say a good base, like you want to have a good garage gym that you're not going to spend like a fortune on. Have some type of rack where you can have a barbell, right? Like there's no better exercise than like barbell back squat, right? And so
deadlift.
Yeah, doing that, do a deadlift, do a bench. So I mean, you got to have a barbell if like you really want to get after it.
Yeah.
I'd say probably have a pull-up bar as well, mouse to the wall when I got, and then probably a box, like a jump box or something.
Yeah.
You really don't need that much, like.
And you get good rack with the pull-up on it, right? Like you can get those all in one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
But I mean, mine's nothing fancy, like literally people see it on social media, but that's it. Like I literally just have some horse stall mats. I've got a pull-up bar and I've got a rack, and that's it.
No, I mean you're just moving heavy objects, right? Like that's all I'm trying to do is get some heavy objects I can move around.
Yeah. What about you? Are you swimming still?
Yeah. So especially when I'm in Bermuda, I mean, for my first 3 years there, it was on principle. I was in the ocean every single day. Every single day. Yeah. Hurricane or not, no matter what the temperature was, I was in every single day. And I would come out sometimes I'm bleeding everywhere because it would get a little dicey sometimes. So after 3 years, I said, it doesn't need to be every day, right? Like I should be enjoying this. Because when we first went, I didn't know if I was going to be there for a month or 3 months. It was like, I don't want to take this for granted. I really want to make sure I'm making the most of it. So I do strength training 4 days a week. I work with a personal trainer mostly I have some shoulder issues, mostly like some soft tissue work, smaller muscle stuff, not like I don't need somebody else to push me. Like I know what failure feels like and how to push that. So my strength training is kind of my own, the personal trainers for that. And then I do typically with some friends swimming. One day will be the 5x4 instead of the 4x4, the Norwegian kind of hit thing for VO2 max. So it's 4 minutes all out. And you could do it on a rower, on a bike, on running and swimming, and then 4 minutes rest. So you want equivalent rest in swimming. And the first time I did that, I was shot the rest of the day. Like it was like, my body was not used to that because what they found is HIIT's super impactful, but most people do either not nearly enough intensity for the short period they do, or they're not doing it long enough. Yeah. And to really push VO2 max, you want to be in that 3 to 5 minute range.
Yeah, you do it hard, really take a quick break, do it hard, take a quick break, keep going.
Or, I mean, if you're doing super, super hard, it may be like 30 seconds on and a 5 minute break. Really? I mean, yeah. Like you want full recovery and then all in immediately to go to it. So I do that 1 day a week and then try to do a longer zone 2 or if I'm with my friends, more sprint work stuff. Because this is one of those stats that I don't think anybody has ever proven or disproven, but it's like, 97% of people never sprint again after the age of 30. And I don't know how you came up with this stat, but it gets cited everywhere and it seems realistic. Like
it does.
Long jogs or whatever, but they're not sprinting.
They're like going all out. Yeah. Well, so we have this thing that, again, like the Epidad Fit thing is somewhat new for us. We've been running it for about 4 or 5 months now. And it's just kind of exploded, which is really cool to see, like, kind of product market fit and cool, this is needed.
This is really resonating.
Yeah. But as part of the Epidad company, one of our kind of flagship things that we set up was called the Epidad 7-Day Challenge. And one of those days is exactly that. It's a sprint.
Yeah.
And I have to put like a legal disclaimer on there, like, hey, don't sue me. You're stressed before.
Tear a muscle.
Yeah. But that's exactly right though. And the concept is like, hey, to get where you want to go, like there's going to be periods in your life where like you have to go all out.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's what we're trying to equate it to. But yeah, the Epidad 7-Day Challenge is awesome. We're really big on kind of daily habits inside of our community. But then also we've got to push ourselves to that exertion point. And we get so comfortable now, in kind of our mid to older stages of life that nobody really pushes themselves.
And the story you tell, and part of this I think came from the 80s and 90s was just not knowing as much as we knew about fitness too, of you need to go for a 60-minute jog and not realizing most fitness that people do is trash fitness. It's too high for zone 2. So you're not building your zone 2 base, but it's not nearly high enough for zone 4, zone 5. Yeah. And you're not doing strength training and you're just kind of at this garbage heart rate wearing you down, lowering your testosterone, but isn't giving you physiological benefits, like just push it one way or the other.
Yeah, zone 2, man, that's the worst thing ever. So I ran my first marathon last year. And I honestly had never been much of a runner at all. Like I was in the Army, right? So we ran all the time.
Right.
And then once I got off active duty, I was like, all right, I'm never running again. I was like, I'm over that. But I'm really big on goal setting. And I was like, hey, I've never run a marathon. Like that's just a box I want to check.
Okay.
And so I got on a really like condensed plan. It was an 8-week plan to go run a marathon. I was like, all right, let's do it. But that was like my first experience with zone 2. Because again, I wasn't really a big like running guy.
Right.
And I was like, this is brutal. Like I would much rather go sprints than just like
because it's way slower than you think to keep your heart rate.
Like
there.
when I first started, I was like, just check my heart rate. I was like, God bless, man, I'm like running an 11:30, 12-minute pace right now, and like having to be there to keep my heart rate down.
Well, that's good discipline to do it because so many people just, oh, no, like I'll be better if I'm at 140, 150. Like, no, you're not. So it's interesting because you talked about as a dad and getting into the fitness, and it's fitness, the gym, but you started with supplement side. Mm-hmm. So what were those core supplements? You're like, hey, this is really what's kind of missing.
Yeah. So I was always a very big supplement user, but didn't know much about them. And so in starting this business, a real core thing with me was like, hey, I'm a dad now. I need to be healthy, and I actually start taking care of myself. And that's when I started doing research into what all is in supplements. Yeah. I just blew my mind.
Because you don't know.
No, you don't. No. And so like, I was used to going down to Walmart, picking up like the $15 pre-workout or something. I was like, oh my God, this is like absolutely terrible. Yeah. So, it's kind of our flagship product we have is just our pre-workout. Okay. So it's all natural ingredients. And then we've got 5 grams of creatine in there, which is a little bit different than kind of your mainstream pre-workout. And that was fun. If you guys go onto the Dad Company Instagram page, you can just kind of like watch the story. And it was literally me just like a chemist in my kitchen, like mixing stuff up and just like learning about all these different mixtures and formulations. And it honestly took me probably 6 months or so of just kind of tinkering around and like buying every pre-workout in the market and like what do I like, what do I not like, and like surveying our potential customers. And then we felt like we got to a pretty good formulation. With the effect of it, but the taste was horrendous. Like, I didn't have any. I wasn't like flavor house in my kitchen, so I was just like, just like slam it down and be like, all right, how does this feel? Okay. So we got a good feel, and then we had to start working with some really really quality manufacturers, and thankfully Atlanta is a really good base for manufacturers. So we've gone through a couple of really good partners to dial in that product, and so that's our flagship. And then, folks started asking us, hey, when are you going to have a protein? We got a pre-workout. I need a post-workout. So we launched that about a year ago now. And we call it Paleo Post. And it's a little bit of an alternative to your traditional whey protein. Okay. So ours is a beef isolated protein. And there's a few reasons behind that. And really the big one is the addition of collagen. And so what we've done with some of our supplements is really try to like reduce the amount of supplements you're having to buy and kind of combine them, right? Yeah. So with our pre-workout, we've got 5 grams of creatine. It's already in there. Like you should be getting 10 a day. So like there's your 5. And then additionally, guys take collagen as well. Yeah. We kind of roll that in together with beef isolate. 100% natural. It's flavored with stevia and cocoa powder, and it is tremendous. What's great is there's zero lactose as well, and so a lot of folks have some bad, stomach responses.
Well, zero whey, right?
Like zero whey.
Yeah, because I have friends allergic to whey, so we're trying to find.
Yeah, so it's a great solution for that. We're super proud of that one. It's definitely not our most popular, but it is tremendous. Okay. And then we launched our first multivitamin about 4 months ago. Okay. So it's an ancestral multivitamin. We call it ancestral. Reason being is we go to a lot of compounds that were more active in kind of our caveman days, if that makes sense. And so our modern diet is kind of adapted to where we don't get a lot of those nutrients that we used to. And so we've got a great multivitamin out now as well.
And what gaps is that one filling? Like magnesium?
Yeah, so I should have brought a bottle. And I'll read out the label for you. But so we've got 32 vitamins and minerals in there. So it is absolutely stacked, just from a compound perspective. But yeah, you're really thinking about vitamin D, you're thinking about magnesium, thinking about zinc, and just make sure that we're clinically dosed, for everyone's compounds.
Yeah. And then what about your whole foods around that, right? So that's supplemental, but it's funny because you hear all these different stories of dads putting on weight once they have kids and and the tips different people get. And so like my roommate from college is like, oh, my doctor said like the number one thing you can do is don't clean your kids' plates. It's like that alone. It's like that is responsible for X% of the dad weight gain. And then there's all the dad tax, like all the things that you add in. What is your nutrition outside of the supplemental world?
Yeah. So I'll just say this. And I was having a conversation with a buddy at breakfast this morning about this, there's like two types of people, I think, that we could ultimately go after. And one is like the dad that is just, I eat McDonald's every day and like I just have zero awareness around like what I should be putting in my body. And then there's this whole other part of the spectrum. It's like I'm the dad that has a 6-hour morning routine, and like I do,
Peter Attia.
I do the 20-minute cold bath and 20-minute sauna, and just like to the extreme.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we want to be in the middle, right? Because it's very difficult to take that dad and eat McDonald's every day and be like, no, man, you need to totally shift things up and like go to the extreme.
Yeah.
So we like to keep it very simple with our guys inside the Adapt Fit program. We just go to the macros, right?
Yep.
So that's it. Say, hey, if it is a whole food, good, right? Like try to stay away from processed foods as much as you can. Try to stay away from artificials. And we just set macros for guys.
Okay.
So there's a lot more you can do than that. But what we found is by keeping it very simple.
Do you start at protein as the base and then build the fat and the carbs?
Yep.
Okay. So what is is it dependent? Is it, your lean mass, your target lean mass?
Yeah. So it's going to be dependent upon the goal, right?
Yeah.
So if a guy's, like 300 pounds, I'm not really cool. You're eating 300, grams of protein. So what we do is we say, hey, where's your ideal, right? Like where would you be at ideal, right? If they say I'm at 200 pounds, say, okay, cool. What we're going to do is we're going to set you at 80% of that 200. Okay. Because 20% body fat, right? Is kind of our target. If we can get below that, that's great. So we set the baseline for 0.8 of your ideal body mass.
Okay.
And then so we start there, and then based off preferences, right, for carbs and fats, we like to go a little bit heavier on the carb side.
Okay.
With healthy carbs.
And then on the protein, is it gram per pound?
Per pound of body weight.
Ideal lean mass.
Yeah. So we would go 0.8.
Okay. That's 0.8 grams to total weight, which is...
Because that'll get us to healthy, right? Like that'll get us to 20% or less of body fat.
Yeah.
And, if you want to go beyond that, right, and think about like, I'm going to go step on stage, like there's a lot of things we can tweak in there.
Yeah.
But again, like
very few people are scientists.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to live it. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, we just try to shift the mindset into, hey, we're actually going to track what we eat. And that's a huge eye opener for people.
And the tracking, are you big on scales? Like how?
So again, simplicity.
Okay.
Yeah. So to get the best results, absolutely. Like you got to be on a scale, right? But, if I'm going to have a thing of yogurt, I can kind of eyeball it, be like, cool, I had, 1 cup of Greek yogurt.
The scale I find is a little bit, at least for me, like the continuous glucose monitor, that after a month or two, then I'm way better at I just have no idea. Like just 200 grams of plants, I'm like, I have no idea how much eggplant or zucchini that is until I do it a few times. Like, okay, now I can eye it because I get a sense of what that is.
It's tough for guys that have never done it before, because they literally have no clue. It's a really big eye opener because they're like, man, I thought I was eating healthy. Like I'm eating a Subway sandwich, isn't that healthy? And you're like, no, bro.
Yeah. But that was me. I had an entire summer. I lived on Subway every single day, right? And because it was whole wheat bread.
Yeah.
Right? It's whole wheat. It's good.
So it's an eye opener for them. And then, it can be a little bit painful for the first 2 or 3 weeks to kind of like start to track things. But then, you before you know it, you're like, all right, cool. I kind of know that's 8 ounces of chicken. That's, about 40 grams of protein or whatever.
Yeah. And then, do you find, for me, I find you end up feeling so much better versus so much worse. Like when you slip off it, man, this isn't worth it. Like it feels so much worse. You don't know it when you're living it all the time.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh man, you're like such a princess and you can't eat this, that, and the other. I'm like, look, you can put whatever you want in your Toyota Corolla, but like if I'm going to go work on a Formula One car, like I'm going to be thinking about the fuel I'm putting into that thing. And it's different.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's two things that make me feel like a million times better. I noticed like a very noticeable impact. And one is diet. And like, I'm not perfect. I fall off the wagon sometimes too, like everybody. Like I have a weakness for freaking gas station, like little apple pie thing.
Oh, those fried pies?
Yeah, they're not the fried ones. Okay. I'll shoot you a picture after this, but like that is like my temptation. I can be like, no. But like every now and then, I'll be like, all right, I'll have one. And then I just feel like crap afterwards. Yeah. So that's one is diet. And then two would be some type of morning routine. Just
in how it sets the tone for the day?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're really big on morning routines. Again, it doesn't need to be the extreme of like you need to spend 3 hours doing this. Because like all the guys we talk to are busy dads. Like we don't have the time. But at least to have something that's like ritualistic in the morning. And the way that we approach morning routines is twofold. So one is you have your agenda. So like if you have the perfect morning, what would your morning routine look like? Right. And like, hey, it may be, I do get a cold bath. It may be, I do meditation, I do breathwork, I do prayer, I get a workout in, whatever. Like that's your agenda. But on the other side of that is what is your intention? Like, what do you actually want to get out of the morning routine? And what we found is you can have the perfect, agenda, but that's not always going to be the day, right? Like you may have a kid that's screaming throughout the night or, just whatever happens, you don't have that full agenda. But if you can still meet your intention of the morning routine, like that's a win. And so for me, my intention is I want to connect with myself and I want to connect with God.
Okay.
And I can do that in 2 hours or I can do that in 5 minutes, right? And so my agenda shifts based off of what life looks like. But like I still have the intention of the morning routine.
And that intention, that's great because it's when you think about stress management, you think about mindset, you get back to the same words, whether it's meditation, like meditation with an intention. What is your intention? When you go to yoga, like, okay, set an intention for the day. Same if you sit down for prayer, right? Like, what is this conversation I'm having with God? And so in that, what does that spectrum look like of, hey, when I have my perfect routine, it's this, or everything I can press on all. Here's my 5 minutes, what I can get in there.
Yeah, I mean, perfect, I'm really big on movement in the morning, so like I get my workout in the morning.
Okay.
And I think a lot of guys would probably echo that with kids too. It's like, if you don't get it in the morning, man, like the day's gone, you may tell yourself you're going to do it, but like you're probably not going to get around to it.
Yeah.
Typically it is, wake up, and then we have something that's really core to our community called your identity statement.
Okay.
And so we advise the guys and we hold people accountable to connecting with their identity statement first thing in the morning. So like you wake up and then this is when you ask like, who are you? It's like, there's a much longer discussion. Yeah. This is something that guys create within like the first couple of weeks of working with us. And ultimately it is like at your core, who are you? Like when you die, like, what's going to be on your tombstone? And so for me and for the guys in our community, like we speak that out loud into existence every single morning.
Okay.
So
in front of a mirror, you just say it out loud, or like how do you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's not in front of a mirror. I mean, it could be, right? Yeah. But it's literally, there's a very powerful thing that happens when you're not just writing it down, but like you're speaking it into existence.
Yeah.
So for me, that's typically in the car. I'll just, just kind of sit back and just boom, say my identity statement. And so, I mean, mine, I've been saying it for years now. But yeah, it's extremely powerful. Just to connect with that identity, like first thing.
How long did it take you to cultivate that? Like create it, craft it, and say, this style, like this captures me.
Yeah, a pretty good while. I mean, we ask the guys to do it like within the first 2 weeks.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
But they can change, right? It can shift and change a little bit. Like we want to add something to it. Every now and then I'll kind of hear a nugget or a piece of wisdom and be like, wow, I really resonate with that. Like I'm adding that into my identity.
Yeah. I've seen it done. I'd love to check this one out because like Peter Diamandis with the moonshot thing, he has maybe like a 5-day or 1 week kind of process where you go through it to get that. And then I don't know if you know Jim Lohr, he was big coach of Olympians and tennis greats, but he has this the personal credo journal, and it's these companion books, like one book about it, but then this separate journal that's 90 days, I don't know, 180 days of crafting.
Yeah.
And then how are you going to track it? How do you measure it? And really working through that process. But it's funny to me, especially in a world where we know so little about what is required to be successful in the future because of how fast AI is moving. Like, how important is it to know that in 1588, Spain, the Spanish Armada tried to invade England. Like, is that going to help you in some part of the world?
Yeah.
But we're still teaching a lot of school that way versus understanding mood management and noticing your mood and mental states and stress management and your personal credo and all that. Like, that's something that's universal that will always be true, I would imagine, at a human level. And yet there's no education. We have to go in our 30s, our 40s to go try to figure this stuff out because no one ever taught us this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really started for me, like this journey started when I started the company, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, cool. If I'm going to be this guy that's talking about dad stuff, and like be a quote unquote like dad influencer or whatever, like I need to figure this out. And then it got kicked into overdrive when I found out that I was having a son. Right. And it was really like, okay, cool. Like I need to be the man, the example of him to follow. I was like, what is a man? Like what is that? Like, what do they do? And so I went down this journey, did all types of, reading, listening, journaling, and really resonated with one book. It is called Raising a Modern Day Knight.
Okay.
I'll probably butcher the author's name. I think it's Robert Jordan, but we can look it up. But he says a man does 4 things. And like, this is part of my identity now.
Okay.
And so a man accepts responsibility. He rejects passivity. He leads courageously, and he expects a higher reward, which is life after death. And so I was just like, wow, that is so powerful. Like when you really think about it, it's like, that's what a man does. And that's how I need to live my life. And like, that's the example I'm going to set for my son. So I've taken that and crafted it into my identity. So now I know every day when I wake up, I speak that out loud into existence. Like, this is who I am, and this is how I want to show up.
Yeah. Is journaling something you still do? Do you go back?
I'm terrible at journaling. Okay. Yeah, I haven't cracked the nut on that one yet. I get into a routine, then I get out of the routine. So maybe I get some pointers from you on that one. I know it's super important to do, and I find value in it, but I just haven't cracked that one. Yeah,
I'm curious on how important it is to do, because this is back to people say, oh, I hate exercising because I don't like running. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, you don't like running. They're infinite. You might like strength training. You might like yoga. You might like swimming, right? They're all these flavors. And so I think it gets back to, for me, intention, right? You're talking about what are you trying to get out of the journaling in the first place? And if that's not working for you to get that, like where else can you get that? A friend of mine, Adam Grant, talks about, like, he's just not into meditation. He finds other things that he does meditative. But the idea of just sitting there and doing it, it's like, okay, then what is the purpose of me sitting there? Is it to calm my mind? Is it to focus? Is it to learn how to better notice my own intentions, my own breath that come into my body? Oh, here's how I'm better able to do it, because I shy away from there being objective truths on our health. A lot of times it's subjective truths, because the only effective thing is what you're actually going to do and stick with. So journaling is worthless if you're not going to stick with it, right? Like, no, it's not. It was great for those people. It's not great for you. So I find journaling helpful, but I will say, back to the morning routine, it's very similar. I have my ideal state, and then it's kind of an order of prioritization of what comes off first, what comes off second, as you get compressed. And journaling a lot of times is the one that goes first. It's one of the first, and then like, okay, well, meditation goes from 20 minutes to 10 minutes to 5 minutes, like compressed down, and then it's the movement's the last to go. Right? Like that's the one that I try to build around. Yeah, for sure. I think going back to routines and kind of ideal state, one thing that I've adopted just honestly within the last probably few months is breathwork. And it was something that I tried before. And again, like, is it right for you? Is it not? And it just wasn't right for me. But I think it's because I didn't have the right format, like the right intention behind it. But I found in the last 4 months, like even just like a quick 5 to 10 minute breathwork session in the morning, like paired with me speaking my identity in existence, it's like, dude, I show up like a freaking animal, And that breathwork, what does that look like for you? Because there's so many different modalities. Yeah, so I've tried to do it on my own before. I think that's where I struggled. I'm like, because I've never been diagnosed, but like I have ADHD 100%. So like, it's like a ping pong game going on in my head, while I'm sitting there trying to like just breathe and focus on breathing. So I do guided breath work. Okay. What do you use? There's this cat on YouTube. It's called Breathe with Sandy. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of him before. No. He's a really popular one. He wears he's shirtless. He's got like ponytail and like white yoga pants all the time. And I was like, this is my guy. Yeah. But he does a ton of different methods. I mean, he does
all these crazy names that I probably couldn't even pronounce.
Okay.
But I mean, super, super helpful.
Nice. And it's a 1 a day thing for you, or how?
Yeah. So I'll do it in the morning. Okay. And then I try to, like, when I'm getting stressed about the day, if I'm conscious enough and intentional enough, I'll take a step back and be like, okay, cool. Let me maybe take 2 minutes just to kind of have a mental reset. Breathwork's a good way to do that.
Yeah. For me on the breathwork front, so I have a morning 5 minute, just the physiological side, 5 minutes of that kind of ideal state. And then I have calendar reminders that send me an email twice a day, kind of like 10:45. And then what ends up being right before I get my daughter from the nanny, like after school at the end of the day, to try to do this transition from work to dad, where I stop and I do some 4-7-8 breathing to just come back in my body and like have that mental shift.
Yeah.
So one kind of middle of the day for me, I guess, right before lunch, like breaking the day and being conscious. And then at bed, and this has been a game changer for me. So I did a program with back in 2019. It was like 20 of us, but it was with Andrew Huberman and the guy who created the Mind Gym for the SEALs, who ran one of the elite teams there, and all these people. And they created this program to train executives, like they would train athletes and stuff. And so they taught us some different breath patterns. And it was, you breathe in a set count, you hold it for 4x, whatever that breathe in is, and then you breathe it out for 2. So I breathe in for 7, hold for 28, and breathe out for 14.
Yeah.
I do 4 of those breaths. And people, if I'm sharing a hotel room, and they're like, I've never seen someone fall asleep as quick as you.
Really?
Like I do that and it's just out. And so whether it's 7, 28, 14, or it's 6, 24, 12, like whatever it is, but it's that ratio, 4 or 5 of those breaths.
Yeah.
And like,
I need to do that, because that's one of, like, we're just speaking like holistically on health, like sleep is my worst.
Okay. So yeah, what is your sleep routine? Like
I said, we work with guys who are like, let's get them off McDonald's, so try to do it simple. Like, I'm not the best one to talk to about this, but I try to do a little bit of reflection, a little bit of breath work, before hopping in bed. But yeah, I just get really restless, man. Like I can't fall asleep, and then I definitely don't sleep enough. Like I'm usually in bed 10:30, 11, up at 4:30.
Yeah, that's probably not,
which is not enough. I know it's not enough. But like part of that too is like I've kind of just conditioned myself over time, being in the military, like to operate off less. Like I can still function and get a lot of stuff done, be very high functioning with it, but understand
there are other costs.
Not the ideal.
My parents were both physicians, and I was born when they were in med school, and they told me growing up, like, you can train your body not to need sleep, right? Because in residency, you go and you perform. And here's this physician who wrote all these books because he'd wake up at this time, and he got this many more days in his life because he was awake those times. And then you go actually look at the science, right? Like people tell themselves they're as productive, but like the number of mistakes after X number of hours awake, and like, no, people are dying because of this process. Like it is a measured difference. And then on IQ levels, on early onset dementia, all this, like if you need to wake up on that, I would highly suggest Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, if you haven't read it, because it gets into all the science, and we can train ourselves to get by, but you can't override the biological need. So the brain builds toxins all day. Like there's toxins coming into our body. It is deep in REM sleep that's flushing all that out.
Yeah, you do not want to sleep.
And that's what we're cutting short.
Sleep thing,
And so you're not flushing it. And then, like you think about Reagan and Thatcher and all these people that were notorious for like being able to get by with no sleep, and they all got dementia. Yeah, like we pay the price at some point. I think it was Atia made, and probably many others, the really good point of like, there is nothing riskier for an animal, a being, than sleep. Right? You're not out hunting and getting resources. You're totally vulnerable to being killed. And yet in every single species, it's still there. Like this isn't a thing that we can hack around millions of years of evolution. This is a thing that we absolutely need.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious on that too, because there's, I want to say there's a balance, and everything needs to be balanced. Right. And so like with where I'm at in my stage in life, it's like, hey, I need to get things done. And so like there needs to be a short-term sacrifice on sleep to be productive. knowing that even if I extended that sleep a little bit, I'd probably be more productive, but like I need that time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's where I shy away from the word balance in the first place. Like I think it's a dynamic equilibrium. And so depending on the season of life, season of year, like what's going on, you say, I'm going to give up some to have more here.
Yeah.
So like work-life balance, like, well, is it a balance? Is it 50-50? No, like when you have a newborn, it may be 80 or 99-1, right? Like it may be all on that child versus work. And then if you're launching a big project and you have coverage on the kids, like actually it's 90-10 the other way. And so it moves. And as long as, at least for me, it's a conscious decision and made mindfully versus just defaulting. And I recognize I am choosing it, not that it's being imposed on me, which is always true. You say, well, no, I have to do this because of X.
Yeah,
you don't have to do it. You're saying I prioritize X more than this other thing. It is a choice you're making, and you need to get into that story, because if you start going through this life is happening to me, like that's a downward spiral.
Yeah, no, and I'll absolutely say like the lack of sleep is a choice.
Yeah. Well, you did. You just did. You're like, look, where I am in this season of life, like I'm choosing to do this versus this.
And it is. It's just based off calendars. It's based off kids. It's based off of, getting home from basketball practice at 9 p.m., and wanting to have a little bit of time with my wife, and not just be like cooling out, So it absolutely is a choice. I think later on down the line when life circumstances are different, like there could be a different choice to be made there.
Are there any things around sleep, knowing it's a limited window, that you do to try to optimize what you're getting in that window? Eye masks, earplugs, cooling.
Yeah, not really, to be honest with you. Like I said, sleep is one that I'm like, I need to do a lot more, research on and figure out the best, the best tricks and hacks for it. But usually I'm pretty dog tired by the time nighttime runs around, and so I'll do a little bit of breathing and then just boom. No.
I mean, that might be a good next product launch is a sleep stack.
Well, we won't spoil the surprise or anything, but you guys can probably guess. Like everything that we go after is a problem that dads have. Yeah. Right. And so that's one. It's like, hey, you're a dad, you're very busy. You might only be getting 6 hours, but let's make sure they're effective. 6 hours. So,
Fantastic. Part of the whole Epic Dad company, it seems like it's very community driven. Right? It's the whole idea of you're not in this alone. We're going through this together. How do we support each other? Can you talk a little bit about why that approach and the importance of social connection in your life?
Yeah. I mean, if you look just at kind of our history up until about, 150 years ago or so, men operated in tribes, right? We operated in groups and cohorts. And somewhere along the line that shifted to where we're all running around trying to be lone wolves right now. And that honestly just doesn't work. I think we've been conditioned to believe that it works. We've been conditioned to believe that we're men, we shouldn't raise our hands and ask for help, when ultimately the community is what's going to drive success, because it's going to set a higher standard for you to live up to. But then it also gives you that connection piece to where if you are having a hard time and having trouble, you've got somebody you can reach out to instead of just burying it down, inside yourself. We're huge on community. Like we started as a supplement brand. But our mission is very big. So our mission is to change the culture by creating better dads. And because our mission is really big, like we've had this awesome community come around it and like rally around it. And honestly, that's how the Epic Dad Fit started was, we put out supplements and we kind of had some workout programs and stuff. And they're like, hey, you need a gathering place for all of this. And that's what kind of prompted it.
And is there an in-person component to it? Like, explain kind of.
Yeah. So it's all online right now. So kind of our flagship program is just called the Epic Dad Fit. It's a 90-day program. We've got a lot of things kind of post 90 days that the guys fall into, but like we really focus on the first 90 days. So what that looks like is we have 3 pillars. And so we coach guys on each of these pillars. And the first one's mindset. And so inside the company, inside the program, we have this philosophy, this framework that's called the Epic Dad Framework. And it's really designed to take that dad that is eating McDonald's or is not living intentionally and wants to make a change, and walk them through a very structured process. And it's 6 pillars of the framework. And so that's mindset. And those pillars are identity and values is number 1. So we kind of already talked about the identity, right? And then we help craft personal values and also family values, because it's great to have personal values, but also you're the leader of your home. Like, you need to be setting those family values. And then the third pillar is vision. And so once we basically, once we know who we are, which is identity, and then we know what's important to us, which is values, then we need to know where we're going. And so a lot of guys we talk to, like that's the biggest missing component is those three. And like, that's when we feel, like we're stagnant, we're not making progress, we feel depressed because like, one, you don't know who you are, you don't know what's important to you, you don't know where you're going, right?
So it's unlikely you're going to get there.
Exactly. so that's step 3 is vision. Step 4 is mission, which is how do we take that pie in the sky vision and really make that tactical? And so for us, that looks like we take that vision and we break it down into your body, your relationships, your mind, and your finances. Can I curse in this podcast?
Yeah.
Right? Be real, motherfucker. That's how I remember it.
Okay. That's an acronym. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But we say, hey, that kind of encompasses all of your vision, right? Like, where do you want to be in your body? Like 2-3 years from now, where do you want to be in your relationships with your kids, with God, with your wife? Where do you want your mind to be? Like, how do you want to be feeling? How do you want to be showing up? And then finances, obviously that's, hey, where do you want to be, from a career or business perspective? So that's what we ask guys to write, is get crystal clear on that about 2-3 years in the future, which is great, right? Where we want to go, but then now how do we get there?
And I love that timeline too, because just coaching people like, well, I don't know if this is my forever job. This is my forever.
Yeah.
I'm like, that bar is too high.
Yeah.
Right. We live way too long for that to be the bar right now. Look at the 2 to 3 year cycle. And if it's going in the right direction, then as long as you keep going up to the right towards your kind of
but your vision needs to be iterative, right? Because things are going to change.
Yeah.
Within that 2 to 3 year cycle, like maybe I have another kid, maybe I'll lose my job, maybe life happens, and so we got to adjust course.
Yeah.
But we need to have a course.
Right. You have a North Star that's like direction, but the 2 to 3, the mission part of it, the implementation of what's the right trajectory to get there. I like that 2 to 3 year cadence.
Yeah. And so what we do is we take that vision, it's in 4 categories, and then we set a mission, which is just quarterly goals.
Yeah.
And so we say this quarter, what goals are you going to have in those 4 categories that get you closer to your vision? So that's mission. And then we go down into what we call wins, because it's nice to have a goal, right? But we really need to focus on like the process, implementation steps that are going to get us to that goal. So really focusing not necessarily on like the KPI. So like, let's say, the best example, the easy example is always around like weight loss, right?
Okay.
And so say, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds in the next 90 days. Like, cool, that's a great goal. Like, how are we going to get there? Yeah. And so exactly. So that's what wins are.
Yeah.
So wins is just like, what are the daily habits that you need to implement that are going to get you to success?
Yeah.
So for our program, we give out those habits, and then you can always add to, but you can't take away.
Okay.
And so our habits, very, very simple. You never ever hit the snooze button, ever. Number 1. Number 2 is we're going to hydrate in the morning, right? So we drink 24 ounces of water right when we wake up. Number 3 is we're going to connect with our identity statement in the morning. So once that's crafted, we connect with it every day.
Yeah.
4 is we're going to get 10,000 steps in every day. We're going to move our bodies, regardless of if you have a workout late on or not, like you're going to get movement in.
Yeah.
Number 5 is personal development work. So even if that's just like 5 minutes of reading or something that like you're putting into your mind that's going to positively benefit you in the future. And then last is tracking macros, right? It's all around nutrition. And so it's super simple and it's not overwhelming, right? Because when you write that vision, and it's supposed to be a big vision, and you think about that all the time, it's like that can be overwhelming. Like, how do I get there?
Yeah.
And so like we just implement the mission quarterly and then implement those daily habits.
I mean, as a former swimmer, right, we'd have to be at the pool at 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of if you had to set your alarm early enough to hit snooze, it meant 10 minutes less sleep. Like I would get up at 4:52, right? Like it was dialed in so much because this is how I would get to the pool.
Yeah.
And so if you hit snooze, then it'd have to be the alarm's at 4:42. I got 10 minutes. So snooze was just never a thing for me.
Yeah.
And to make sure it was never a thing, the alarm for me was always the other side of the room. There was no way to hit snooze unless I got out of bed, went and dealt with it all.
So,
and by that point, you're up. And
so I'll say this, right? So when you're an athlete and you have some place to be, you're tying yourself to something bigger than yourself, right? And so you're much less likely to make that decision to hit the snooze button, right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens with dads, even if they're like former athletes, they get out and they're living just for themselves, right? And so if all I'm doing is trying to do something for myself, like who's going to care if I hit snooze? It's just me, right? And so that's why we do so much work on the front end of crafting that identity and like, why are you freaking doing this?
Yeah, you have to live outside yourself.
Yeah, so like you have to tie the simple act of not hitting the snooze button to something much, much greater.
Yeah.
Right? And so like the way we do that is one, you're making a promise to yourself the night before, right? That like, I'm going to get up at, let's say 5 a.m. for example.
Yeah.
I'm going to get up at 5. Like I just made that promise to myself. And if it hits 5 and I hit the snooze button, like I just broke a promise to myself first thing in the morning. And then even if that only happens occasionally, it's like, what unconscious signal are you sending to your mind, right? That like, you're not the person that can follow through what you say you're going to do. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough thing for me, even with speed limits, right? Somebody had this line, it's not a law unless it's physics, right? Because that's like gravity, things are going to fall at this rate on this planet. Whereas we have these laws, right? Oh, these are laws. But there's variable enforcement and how strictly they're enforced. Yeah. And like, well, if we don't care about speed limits, how important is this other one? And it's the same kind of thing of if you start building patterns of I tell myself I'm going to do X and then I don't do it.
Yep.
Who am I in that? If I can't trust myself, how could I expect anyone else to trust me?
Exactly. The biggest thing with that, right? Is like, let's say, you're married, you got your wife right next to you, right? And you tell her, hey, I'm going to get up at 5, go to the gym, and you sleep in. Like, how's she going to trust you to leave the family? Like, you can't even lead yourself to get out of bed and go to the gym, I will say this on snooze though. And like, I've always struggled with it, like for whatever, maybe it's because I don't get enough sleep. It's probably the root cause. Like not so much anymore, but like I used to struggle with it a lot. Like even when I was like, man, like what am I doing? Like I don't want to do this. And so, yeah, a couple things to help there. One is obviously putting the phone, way across the room, which I did for years. It drove my wife freaking crazy.
Because it would wake up.
Yeah, it would go up. Yeah, and then it'd take 10 seconds to get over there and turn it off, and now she's up. One thing that's been a game changer is I have this little watch. I'll give him a shout. It's Pavlok, Pavlok. I should I should sell for them or something. I'm sold.
Big fan of it.
Yeah, so it's this little watch, and you charge it the night before. You put it on, you set your alarm, and it vibrates, one. But then there's a lot of settings on there, and one is an electric shock.
Okay.
Which is crazy. And I mean, there's different settings you can do. It was like really big or not a lot, but it's just kind of like a little electric fence touch. And that's been a game changer for our marriage because I'm an early riser. She is not. And so now I wake up silently and I haven't snoozed. I don't know how long, so.
That's amazing. It so gets back to Odysseus tying his hands to the mast, right? Like what are the things I put in to force me to be my better self, even when I don't want to be. So it's not a decision. So it's like for me on fitness and like going to the gym. Yeah, I'm sure there are days I don't want to do it, but it's just not a question. Or it's like, oh, on dessert. Well, no, I just don't order dessert. Like, of course I want to order the chocolate cake, ganache, like whatever, but I don't do it. Right. So it's not a decision I have to deal with. And same kind of thing of like, okay, if it takes electric shock or it takes having to get up to like just set the parameters to create an environment that makes you be the person you want to be. And over time, you are that person.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, tell me about Lively. Like, I want to know more. I know a little bit about your story, kind of the company, but we'd love to hear kind of the genesis behind it, where you guys are going.
Yeah. I mean, so the idea is just like you were building out these pillars for Epic Dads, right? To be an Epic Dad and lead this. We looked at what is health, and not health is historically defined as absence of disease. Like, oh, you don't have cancer, you're healthy. You don't have diabetes, you're healthy. No, like to be healthy is to live with vitality, to have this vibrant life. And to do that, it's not just going to the gym and have physical fitness. You need to fuel your body with the right stuff. You have to rest and recover your body so that you can show up each day to do that. You need your mindset in the right place. And 100% what we were just talking about, you need to live for something bigger than yourself, outside yourself. Otherwise, it is a soulless, purposeless existence, right? Like you need all these pillars, and it's not just an opinion thing. I mean, there's hard data on, if you're socially isolated, you have a 50% higher risk of developing early onset dementia. Right? Like it is as important as the nutrition, as the sleep, everything else in terms of taking care of your health. And so my co-founder and I, Lou, we looked at the space, and I had built a marketplace business. He had scaled booking.com to what it is. And we said, wait, there's not a place in the world that brings all this under one roof to help you understand that, navigate, discover the right products and step through, and then much less track, right? Be able, with all the data, your Garmin or your Whoop or your Aura, you're capturing all this data. But what are you doing with it? How is it actually helping you? And to be able in a marketplace say, oh man, I see over the last 45 days, your sleep's really deteriorated. We see people who buy this brand of magnesium 3 and 8 within 20 days, see an extra 18 minutes of deep sleep on night. Yeah. Would you like to add this to your cart? And be able to come to you with way better insights than, oh, people who looked at this also looked at this. Like, I don't care what they look at. I care about, here's a problem. Like you talked about, what are real problems people are dealing with? And what do we see helps other people like you solve that problem? And so that's the mission behind Alively, is to help anyone live healthier longer. And when you broke into those 3 categories, I mean, it's exactly those 3 categories we talk about. We're like, at one end, you have the Brian Johnsons of the world. Like, we're not unlocking new stuff for them. Yeah. At the other end, you have the guys I sat next to when I was going down to Florida last time. It was like, oh yeah, no, I was going to a wellness conference. Like, no, I'd smoke and sit on the couch. And like, I'm not your target. I'm like, you're exactly right. You're not.
Yeah.
But there's a huge middle, especially with GLP-1s, where people are saying, I'm actually starting to feel better. Like, I feel more confident. I could go to the gym now. I want to start living this life. Like, I do feel better. And that's a huge middle of just not knowing where to start and then where to go after they start and how to stick with it and move on. And that's where we want to step in and help.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a hugely important mission because, like you said, there's the 2 spectrums. And like, maybe we can't help the guy that has like, 15 wearables and like is like fully dialed in and stuff. Yeah. They got it. But then, to that guy that's like, no, man, I just, I'm smoking or like eating fast food all the time. Well, what is your thought there? Like, how do we capture those guys too and make them problem aware, that want to seek a solution?
It's needing an aha moment. So the funny thing is I give that example of that guy. And then he said, well, but next year, I told myself, I'm 49. When I'm 50, I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to start exercising. And so I said, fantastic. The easiest way you're going to do that is not to just quit smoking, but to stack the 2. So every time you want a cigarette, just get up and go for a walk. Just replace one with the other. And he's like, that's a really good idea, right? Like, there's this park right by my work. And he's like, I could even step into it. They're like, what I'll do instead of smoking 2 cigarettes, I'll do 1. I'm like, that may be a good way to do it. Like, I have no idea how to quit smoking, but like, that may be great because it at least starts you. If all you did was cut the number of cigarettes you smoked in half, like, man, I just helped that guy's life. That'd be amazing. And then if that was a step to go all the way down to, I stopped smoking. I went from 4,000 steps a day to 14,000. Like, can you imagine the compounding interest on his health? If at 50, he's able to do that and go forward. But each person needs that trigger. And for him, it sounds like hopefully it's his 50th birthday. But other people, it's whatever their aha is, like, hey, I have this trigger. Some it's once they have a kid. Like, oh, now I'm living for something outside myself. Before, whether it's I got out of college, I left my sports team, I got out of college, I got out of the armed services, I was part of this bigger thing, and now I'm not, and kind of rudderless. All of a sudden you have a family. Like, oh, no, I'm not rudderless anymore. I need to be here for this long term. And that's my aha moment. But they need some kind of trigger. And then this is where I think Alively is really trying to step in differently of, it's not just that aha moment, but what is that right step for you? Because it's not an objective right step. It's a subjective and timely right step for you.
Yeah. And I think that's why we've been fairly successful. And like, it's early on with, that fit, but like, we're not going from, I'm on the couch to like, running a triathlon, right? It's like our program, like just to tell you our program, our first 90 days, it's all body weight and a set of dumbbells. That's it. Right. And like, we have guys that are happy with the program that ask like, I'm ready to go on a strength program. And we're like, no, you're not getting it. Cause it's like, we're setting that foundation. Like, we want it to be sustainable because
if you get injured at day 50 and then you don't do anything for 100 days, like, you're worse off than like, no, let's do it.
And then 2, like, we haven't proven to ourselves that like, we have the discipline and consistency and have a routine to do that. Right. And like, I'm the most guilty of this ever of like going all in and like, all right, I'm going to go hard in the paint. And then just like you burn it out, a month later. And then you're like, cool, what happened? We go through it, 3 months later, and I'm like, not on the right track. And so that's been a big mindset shift is like, we don't need to take you from like where you're at now to like an Olympic athlete. Like, we just need to get you on the right step. I know there's a lot we can do past that, but we gotta build the foundation first.
And I think that's where the purpose and the vision is really important, because there's one approach for a business that's very much, I want to show before and after photos, 45 days in, 50 days in, right, to get people in. Whereas this very community driven of, this isn't about selling a quick program. It's about, we're changing culture. And that is an infinite game. Right. And it's just a totally different approach that you can and should take. And
Yeah. It's been so cool, man, to see some of the transformations we've had, along the way. Like even before we started the program, just guys kind of being in our community and seeing the mindset shift and go through our 7-day challenge. And then now they've been like part of our community for, 2-3 years, and like literally just transforming their lives, like how they're showing up at their workplace for their kids, for their family. It's tremendous, man. So it's been a lot of fun. We're early on in the journey, but just seeing that shift has been awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine something more gratifying than that cascading impact in people's lives. I hope at some point you do an in-person.
That's on the roadmap for sure. There's a lot on the roadmap. Yeah. We'll get there to all of them just in good time and good priority, of operations. But yeah, in person for sure.
Yeah, I talk to Lou about this all the time. There are infinite things we can do, but what do we need to do right now? Yeah. So we have the above the line and below the line. Like, hey, there are all these things. These are great ideas, and we will do them at some point because life is long. But what we're doing today, it's this. Yeah. This is what we're doing today.
Yeah. That's been a hard skill to develop. Again, I kind of can have shiny object syndrome sometimes, and I'm like, we got supplements. Let's do this. Let's launch a book. Let's launch a podcast. So it's like, let's focus on what we need to focus on now. Yeah. And with us, it's really the FIT program. Okay. Like that's where kind of all my focus and resources go right now to make sure that's executing at the level that I want it to, that we've got the team, the resources in place, to really drive impact. And then we've got a lot of plans for the supplement side of the business, in the near future, but I'm not going to launch the next supplement until we figure this piece out.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's my last companies, I would go around this idea of the one metric that matters and say, hey, if in the next month, quarter, whatever it is, there was only one thing that moved that we all need to align on, that the business would be better if that was the thing that moved, what is it? And then communicating that every single week in the team meetings. This is one thing. Like, how are you working to move this thing? And so then when I would come back to them, like, oh my God, I have this great idea. And they'd say, that's a really good idea. How does it move that metric? That's a really good point, right? Like it was back to tying my hands to the mast. Like I needed the enforcement mechanism from externally because shiny object. Like as a founder of a company, you're always going to be excited. Like here's what we could do. Like we totally could do that. Should we do that
later?
Like great point.
Yeah. No, I've caught myself doing that a lot, having to kind of rein myself back in, and focus on like what is important right now versus what do I want to do right now,
Nice. Well, before we sign off, is there anything else you want to share?
Oh, man. No.
I guess the one thing I would ask, and maybe it comes from your program because you have a sequential step process, but we work through a lot of things like the fitness side, the mindset side, the stress management side. If someone was just getting started, where would you start them and why?
Yeah, so I would probably say I would start them on what would be our 7-day challenge, which is to kind of kickstart you in the right direction as a dad. And it's going to fall into a lot of those daily habits that we talked about. So is it, hey, we're going to set our alarm and we're actually going to get up, like step one complete, and then just looking at it from kind of breaking out in different categories, would say, hey, let's start the path towards a healthier diet. Maybe it's not, you're going, 100% all the way, but like, let's make a healthier choice here and like try to focus on just whole foods. Yeah. Right. Whole foods. And then I would say start understanding what macronutrients are, because that, for me, at least, that's the easiest way to make sure like you're tracking your nutrition. Yeah. And then on the fitness side, I would say just like movement, man. Yeah, just move your body. Like, it doesn't matter if you're on a crazy, awesome fitness program or anything. Just get out and move your body. Try to get 10,000 steps a day. Yeah. And you can stack a lot on top of that, but like foundationally, make sure you're putting good food in your body. Make sure you're moving your body. Make sure you're holding yourself accountable to the person you say you are. I think that's a missed point for a lot of people, because you think about nutrition and they start thinking all the things they can't do or have to strip out. And there's a separate mindset of abundance there saying, no, let's crowd in this amount of protein and this amount of whole plants. And if we do that, it's definitionally going to crowd out the other crap because you're just not going to be as hungry. And so you may still fit in some other things. Like, let's not worry about restriction. Let's start with what are we putting in there?
And then by definition, it's going to restrict other stuff. You're just not going to eat as much of it.
Yeah. So it would be, hey, let's make sure you're moving your body. Let's make sure you're putting good stuff into your body. Make sure you're holding yourself accountable who you want to be. Then the last piece, which I'm still working on, obviously, in this conversation, would be make sure you're getting some sleep.
Some sleep. Yeah. Yeah. The sleep is I think for most people in this day and age, the easiest, or at least the first to get sacrificed, because there's still only 24 hours in a day. Everybody has it. Bezos, Musk, like everybody gets the same 24 hours. And so if you feel there's certain things you need to get done, it's always going to come out. I do find a lot of times you go back to the one metric that matters, right? Like you could fill up your day if 40 hours, if you were trying to chase all those things, but you're saying, hey, no, it's all Epic Dad Fit. Like this is the thing. Oh, and I got rid of the stuff that was eating up my life that was not adding to it. And then you can get more done, but there's still some of those days and seasons of life that, nope, I still need 18 hours to get all this stuff done.
Yeah. And a lot of it too is just a gap in skill set, I think. Right. So, I listened to a podcast from Dan Martell the other day, and actually just purchased a book. I just started listening to something. He's all kind of about time management. He's got a book called Buy Back Your Time, which I'm really looking forward to reading and implementing. But he had this point of like, the business that I'm trying to create, the life I'm trying to create, like, is it possible? And he's like, well, can I think of one person that's doing this? And it's like, well, yeah, I can think of one person. It's like, okay, so it is possible. Yeah. It's like, you just aren't good enough yet, right? Like, you don't have the skill set yet. And so like, even though I say, cool, I got to get all this crap done and I sacrifice sleep, like there's probably, I'm positive there's somebody that's running $1 billion business right now that gets 8 hours of sleep every night, right? And so there's a skill set gap that I have that I need to build on, so.
It's a funny thing, both being in kind of the podcasting world, because I'm used to most areas of work that I do, whether it's in writing or coaching people or building things, getting more efficient, right? So you can just compress the time needed to accomplish. But if you're recording a 60-minute podcast, like that's 60 minutes, like I can't get more efficient on that, right? So that's the one thing I'm going to have to figure out longer term, because it's everything else I do. I'm like, okay, great. I can get more done because I'm being more productive.
I think it's kind of nice with that though, because you're not having to worry about efficiency.
It's
like the one area of my life that I can just like sit down and have a cool conversation,
Yeah. Expansive. That's a great reframing. That's good. Okay. That's the new story I'm going to tell.
So, where can folks go find more about you, more about Lively?
Yeah, certainly lively.com is going to be the best. On Instagram, it's lively_official. I'm M. Andrew McConnell on Instagram, and then active on LinkedIn. Channels. And you?
Okay. Yeah. So Epic Dad Fit on Instagram or Epic Dad Co on Instagram is the best two places to find me and reach out and try to answer all the messages we get, learn more about our company, our mission, our brand, our fitness program. We got all the stuff there, and look forward to supporting anyone I can.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you for the work you do, because when it's successful, it really does change the culture. It changes society, all for the better. So couldn't be a more important mission.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Drew.
All right, cool.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on lively.com. Enjoy a lively day.